Welcome back to Gloved Up Garage, part 2 of the Fox Body Dash restoration. I've got my dye from SEM. We got the 2 color coats and then we got the prep coat. So this is blue mist, satin black, and then we've got the prep in the middle. We'll need to really clean this with the prep before we put any of the dye on. I'm really happy with the color of this dye. I mean, it is pretty spot on. Now, I'm sure it won't be exact to the lid, but it should be pretty close. And I mean, that's close enough for me. So we'll roll with that. I got 2 cans of it, 2 cans of black. I'm pretty sure I'm only going to use 1 can for the dash, but there's a lot of little trim pieces and things like that. In this video, I'm going to cover mainly just focusing on the dash itself. Now, I know in the previous clip, I talked about the vents and some of the other trim pieces and stuff. I was going to try to do it all at one time. Unfortunately, some of that stuff is not available. It's on back order. I do have the glove box. I've got like the knee trim, and I've got a couple other smaller pieces that I could dig out, clean up. But for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to roll through what really applies to the bigger portion of the process, which is going to be the dash itself. So I'm going to grab some microfibers and we're going to wipe this down with a little bit of alcohol because it has been a couple of weeks since I touched it. I was touching it with bare hands, so there's going to be grease and stuff on it. We'll wipe it down with rubbing alcohol, then we'll go over top of that with this prep spray. And if you didn't watch the previous video, this prep spray actually acts as a little bit of an adhesion promoter, so it will open up the pores of the plastic. It'll open up the pores of what paint is left on this, and it will allow this new paint to stick to it really, really good. And I call it paint. It's dye, paint, whatever you want to call it. The color coat, if you want to call it that, it's going to allow this to stick much better. So we'll grab some microfibers and get to work. Not much has really changed. I wiped it down with the alcohol. You can see there's a little bit of residue still on here. I'll go through this and wipe it down one more time with some alcohol, and then we'll hit it with that prep spray so that it will clean this even more. I don't have a tripod out here, otherwise I would show you guys the process, but basically I'm just taking one of those microfibers, dousing it down with alcohol, and wiping this really, really good, making sure to get into these little corners so that I get any kind of dirt and grease and stuff like that out, because that will affect how the paint does adhere to the plastic. Especially around your high use areas, you can see there's a little bit of alcohol still in this vent area, so I'll make sure to wipe that out. But areas that you're really going to touch, that's where you're going to get a lot of grease. If somebody used a lot of like Armor All in the interior, that's going to kind of go into these little nooks and crannies. If they just like sprayed it on the dash, wiped it down, or if they just sprayed it, or whatever the case may be. If they had like a soda that might have spilled or something. So like in these little areas, I'm making sure to get down in there really, really good. Get any kind of dirt, debris, and grease out of those areas. Once this is all wiped down with the prep spray, then we'll be ready to throw some color on it. All right, we got a couple of wipe downs with the prep spray. Everything's good and clean, nice and dry. I think I'm ready to put some color on this. I'm going to shake that can up really, really good to make sure any kind of sediments or anything that's sitting at the bottom, like the solids of the paint, get mixed up really well. We'll do a couple of little test shots on a box to make sure that spray pattern's good and our nozzle's not messed up. You see this is where I put alcohol on there and it actually ate into the paint a little bit. That's just how soft that paint is that's on the plastic from the factory. So this is the last time that you'll see it kind of mismatched and uneven in blue. And it looks pretty good. I think we're good to go. I'm going to start shaking that color up and we'll come back when we got the first coat. I just finished the first coat and I did a very light coat, but man, it really looks good. The color match is what is just blowing my mind. And here's how you can tell how close it is. Because before, there's a black line that was right here where we went from blue to black. I mean, it's perfect. The color match is just perfect. I'm really, really impressed with this one. I was not sure how close it would be, but like you can see, there's the line there where the old paint meets the black paint, but it's unbelievable. This is just the first coat, and like I said, I did a really light coat. When you're doing this dye or this interior paint, because you can see there's a little bit of texture here on the dash, if you get too heavy with this stuff, it's going to fill in that texture. It won't look right. It'll look smooth. If you're going for a custom look, it won't be too bad. But if you're going for that factory look like I am, you want to leave this texture in there as much as you can. So really light coats, it'll help kind of fill in the grain and then build it up from there. The color, the texture, the shine, I mean, this thing is perfect. I can't wait to get a couple more coats. I think I'm going to go with 3 coats on here just because of how well the color covers on this first coat. I'll do a couple just little heavier coats. Again, I don't want to fill in that texture. And then we'll let this dry out in the sun for a few hours. We'll tape it off, and then we'll do the black part up here at the top. And then that is when this thing is really going to pop. So stay tuned. We'll get this going. Second coat down, and I'm done. I think it looks really good. I'm very happy with the color. I'm very happy with the way it turned out. It's still a little wet, so it's going to be a little shiny. It does flatten out as it dries. So we're going to let this cure. I'm going to move it out in the sunlight and give it about an hour or so to cure out, because when I go to put the masking tape on, I don't want that to lift off of the plastic, and hopefully it sticks really good like my experiences in the past have showed me. I mean, it's not very delicate. Like you can scratch on it and stuff and it won't come off. I mean, of course, any kind of interior plastics, if you scratch too hard, you're going to get down to the substrate, like the plastic that they're made out of. Just like we had kind of seen where it had worn through the blue paint from the factory and it was down to the gray plastic. So, but overall, very, very happy with this. This turned out really good. I'm looking forward to all the other pieces, like the dashboard and the console, the glove compartment. When that all comes together, this thing is going to look amazing. And even stuff that's supposed to be black, like the instrument cluster hood that goes around here, usually they're kind of faded out, they're nasty looking. Getting it the proper satin black color to match this dash is going to be amazing. It's going to make this interior look really, really good. So I've got to wait for my dash vents to come in. I've got to wait for a couple other pieces here and there, and then we can really finish this thing up in the future once we got all those little pieces to go in. So we'll let this cure. We'll tape it off. I'll come back once I'm ready to paint the black, and we'll see what this thing looks like two-toned. All right, it's all taped up. We're ready to shoot the satin black. Just like the blue, I'll do a couple of light coats. I would imagine this is probably going to take a little bit more paint than the blue, just to get some coverage over top of the overspray from the blue to the black. So I will start this process, get some black paint on this thing, and see where we wind up. Now, what I did to tape this off, just to give you an idea, I used like 3/4 inch fine line tape. Went all the way around the perimeter of where the blue is that needs to stay blue. Went over top of that with a couple of different kinds of masking paper. I had some thinner stuff. There's a couple little holes here I'll probably go back and touch up just to make sure that we don't get any overspray down through there. But a majority of this is covered. If there's a little touch of overspray here and there, it's not going to be too big of a deal. So I'm going to shake this black up, put a coat on, come right back. Pretty heavy with the first coat, but I did a lot of misting. I basically just went around it twice. You can tell there's a little bit of blue showing through here and there in some areas, and that's kind of what you want. What I'm really looking at is about 2 coats. I mean, in all reality, I went around this and just misted it with the first coat, came all the way back around. Started at this corner, went down through here, around the defrost, around the speaker, hit the top part of the dash, came back around here, and started back over here at the speaker. So you're really looking at 2 coats. That's why it's a little heavy. You can see it's a little shiny right there from where it's wet. So we'll let this set up really, really good before I put the second coat on. But this is kind of what you want to see. A little splotchy in this area because I didn't get too heavy in here. I didn't want that grain to fill up because we were trying to transition from the blue to the black. These areas over here are covered up. You'll kind of see the edge of this when the cluster hood is in place. So if I mess this up, it's not too big of a deal. But again, I'm really happy with the texture, really happy with the sheen. This is just, 1.5, 2 coats, whatever you want to call it. So we'll let this set up for about 5 to 10 minutes like the can says, and then we'll put the second/third coat on, see where it puts us. Just did the final coat, and it's a very wet third coat, if you want to call it that. This will flatten out a little bit as it dries. It was really dry when I put this last coat on, and it just looks amazing now. I'm really happy with the finish. It lays down really good, fills in the grain very nicely. That texture is still very factory looking. There's no bugs, no dirt or anything like that in it, which is something to be said when you're spraying, out of a spray can in your garage. Obviously the floor is not clean. This would turn out much better in a spray booth environment where you could kind of bake the finishes on. Between coats, you're supposed to wait 5 to 10 minutes, and that's exactly what I'm doing. And then putting on this last wet coat, I'll let this sit for a good 20 to 30 minutes just to make sure it's set before I start to lift off the masking tape. We'll come back and we'll reveal once it's dry. I couldn't wait any longer. I had to go ahead and peel that masking paper and the masking tape off while it was a little wet. So the dash, the upper part, is still a little shiny compared to what it should be. You can see that the bottom part has got a little bit of a sheen to it. The top is just a little bit shinier than the bottom, but it'll dull out with some time as it cures out. I am very happy with this. This turned out amazing. It's hard for the camera to really pick up how the finish was before. I mean, obviously you all could see the paint was faded out and missing in some places, but this turned out just great. I mean, I could not be happier with this. This is going to be awesome once it's finished up, once we've got all the other pieces that go on this, the vents, those trim pieces, the fuse box cover, glove box, and all that stuff. So that is going to be it for part 2 of the Fox Body Dash Resto. If you wondered how close the cap matched the sprayed product, it is nearly perfect. I know through the camera, the dash does look a little bit lighter, and it kind of depends upon the lighting, but the texture on there will throw the color off in the camera lens. In person, through the naked eye, it looks perfect. It's a spot-on match to the color. Of course, the lid is a lot shinier than the finished product. If you haven't seen part 1 that describes how I prepped this dash and got it ready for paint, make sure you check that out. I'll put it in the description down below. Go back and check that video out. These processes apply to all plastic and vinyl dashes, even some leather dashes you can dye with this SEM color. It doesn't have to be this blue. They have about 30 or 40 different interior colors. So if you were to pull a dash out of another vehicle because it's in better shape and you're worried about a color match, this process still applies. You can match that color and make it look good to match the rest of your interior. With all of that, thank you all for watching. This is part 2. There's going to be multiple more parts to this restoration process. We've got all the vents to go in here, all the trim and all the fuse panels and all the things that I talked about. And we'll have a video that'll cover all of that stuff once we get to that point. Thanks for sticking with me. Thanks for watching the video. Be sure to stay gloved up.